Well, let's talk about hiring salespeople. If you've got 10 applicants, how are you making sure you're finding the very best person for the role? Because we've probably over the years, I don't know, hired 50, 60, 70 BDMs. And like some of them are obviously still with us in different markets, but I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts on making sure you're getting the right person in that seat. Mark, why don't you start?
I'll just say it's the scariest position to hire for because I get sold because they're the best at showing up and rapport and all those things. I think a lot of it has to be reps on meeting that person or putting time into it. I think this is a role where you have more interaction with them. And this is definitely the rep that you go to dinner with them and maybe you have a lunch with them and you see just how they're handling themselves all different times, multiple times, because anyone can really prep for an interview, and BDMs should be first and foremost that are going to show up with their A game. And for us, I think it's always having the reps are more seeing the people more, hanging out with people more before they actually hire.
Mike, what about you?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of sales is just like getting people to know and trust you. So they have to have a good personality. So a lot of it's personality. One of the big things for both our companies and all three of our companies, I know Mark's company well too, core values are just so huge. So making sure they line up with and can speak that like their core values, that they believe in it. So when I do my interview, I actually have 5-pointed questions that are directly, or 6-pointed questions that are directly tied to our 6 core values.
Gotcha.
One for each core value. And if their answer doesn't line up with what we would want their answer to be, they're out. Then I heard a short reel on Instagram recently, and I just freaking loved it. But she said, what's your medal? What medals do you have on your wall of medals? Tell me about your past accomplishments, right? Because a BDM needs to be a winner. They've got to have won. They got to be competitive. They got to want to win. You also said they have to be money driven. I 100% agree with that. This is the position that they basically get to set their own salary. This person could be paid mediocre, or they could be the best paid person in your company typically if they really crush it. And you're happy to pay them that money. So they have to be kind of money driven. What the other question that this lady posed was, what are you obsessed about, right? You got to be passionate about something. If you got somebody that comes in there and they're just like, maybe they should take up accounting or something like that. No offense to the accountants out there, but you got to have somebody who's passionate and driven about something. And then I also love, who else would you bring with you from your past work experience? And if they can rattle off like 5 people, great. And maybe since they're not in a management role, maybe you alter that question. Like, who else would tell me how great of a salesperson you were? And if they can name 4 or 5 people, that type of question, you're just going to gain confidence. And then call them, follow up. I actually love talking to references. It's just so important to get an understanding. Of course, references are going to give you all the positives, but you can typically tell whether this person's legit or they're just bullshitting you.
I think the culture piece you brought up was so important because I think it's like the same business, but I just know that the property management business, you could create a silo between sales and operations very fast if you have a sales guy that doesn't follow the core values or is only looking out for themselves, which usually goes against the core values. So I think making sure that person's going to be fit with the core values, man, that's so big, Mike.
Yeah, huge. Yeah. So we have 2 interview processes. We have we have a phone interview, a face-to-face, and then we actually do a culture interview. And same thing, if they're not a culture fit, it doesn't matter. They're not going to be happy with us. There's nothing wrong with the person. They're just not going to like it here. And so we're like, hey, this isn't going to work. So it takes us longer to hire people, but we do believe in that process.